A number of major colleges here in the United States will welcome students back on campus on Monday. The occasion brings excitement for another school year, but also fears of renewed pro-Palestinian demonstrations that could mirror the disruptive protests that swept campuses nationwide during the spring. According to NBC, some 2,000 protesters were arrested across the U.S. from April 17th to May 2nd alone. And for analysis, let's bring in Cherise Trump, Executive Director of Speech First, an organization committed to free speech on college campuses. Cherise, great to have you back on. We had mentioned the turmoil in the spring across the country. What's your assessment on how administrators handled the situation overall back then?
Yeah, there's been a number of lessons learned on campuses over the last handful of months, especially after this spring semester where you had the encampments where there was multiple violations of the law, where there was trespassing, vandalism, and actual extreme violence and harassment and discrimination taking place on campuses around the country. And the administrators and presidents failed to act, failed to stop the anti-Semitism that was taking place. And we see consequences now of what happens when that happens. You lose donors. Major donors spoke out and pulled their money and their funding from the universities. Congress brought in a number of the presidents of the universities to testify and explain their actions and their behavior. And we saw a number of resignations of presidents of very prestigious universities. So I think what's going to happen now is you're going to see a lot of universities trying to turn this around in the fall, trying to implement more rules and regulations and actually enforce them. Because it's not legal and never has been to discriminate against Jewish students. However, the university administrators were very okay with this happening over the last 2 semesters. So they're going to actually try to maybe make it look like they're not doing that this time.
Yeah, and Cherise, over the summer, the protests and demonstrations seemed to die down considerably. Why do you think that is?
Well, there's not a lot of students on campus over the summer. A lot of them go home. Summer is a very quiet time on college campuses. But we did see a lot of, kind of legal questions answered. There was a lawsuit against the University of California in Los Angeles recently for an actual Jewish exclusion zone on campus where students were barring Jewish students from entering libraries, entering study areas or other areas of the quad, just merely based on the fact that they were Jewish. This is obviously a clear sign of discrimination on the basis of ethnic origin as well as religion. And the judge actually said that this was so unimaginable and so abhorrent to our constitutional guarantee of freedom of religion that he made it very clear. He said this cannot happen. And so that was a federal judge ruling on that case against UCLA. We're still waiting to see if UCLA will appeal. We also just recently saw the Columbia president, President Shafiq, step down for failing to protect Jewish students on her campus. So you're seeing, again, there's been some activity over the summer with regards to resignations and lawsuits. And there's a number of investigations still that yet to go unanswered from the Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights, where they've been investigating a number of these schools for Title VI violations against Jewish students. So we are seeing a lot of lawsuits. And I think, like I said, the lessons have been learned, hopefully, and that the fall we'll see administrators have to crack down on this, even if they don't want to.
Cherise, really quickly, I'm almost out of time here, but what's your sense? I mean, what are you hearing about the climate on college campuses, that is, this coming semester?
Yeah, I think there's a real concern for free speech. That's obviously what our organization, Speech First, focuses primarily on. Title IX is being implemented this month. That's a whole other topic. The Biden administration has rewritten the rules to throw out pretty much all of the free speech protections under Title IX. And so there's a real risk of students being accused of sexual harassment just for merely saying that, that not using someone's preferred pronoun or not, admitting that or not stating that a man can become a woman. And so there's real concerns there with speech. But also with these protests, I think we see a lot of students putting encampments up and going around campus and vandalizing. Those are not forms of speech, and I think it's really important the schools take these opportunities to teach students what speech is protected under the First Amendment and what conduct is not protected. Real crimes, real vandalism, real harassment and discrimination, those are not protected forms of speech. So to reduce it down to say it's a free speech situation actually is untrue. And I think it's up to the universities to really educate students about that.
Well, Cherise, thank you so much for weighing in. We always appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.